If you sell me those chocolates in German, I'll pay you $100,000, said the most influential American businessman at the table, amid laughter. Don't forget to comment from which country you're watching us. That night, the city's most elegant restaurant was filled with politicians, business people, and journalists. It was the dinner before $1 million negotiation with a German investor, and everyone was watching the man who enjoyed the moment with his usual arrogance. Richard, the American businessman, spoke loudly with a tone of superiority that sought to impress his European guest. He said he spoke 5 languages, that he had studied in Switzerland, and that he knew the world's elite. The German Klaus listened with a diplomatic smile, but deep down he seemed bored. He had heard too many men like him. Everything changed when a girl approached the table with a basket of carefully wrapped chocolates. "Would you like to support me by buying a chocolate, sir?" said the girl with a soft but firm voice. Richard looked at her mockingly, as if her presence interrupted his show. "You're selling chocolates here?" He laughed. "We're at a business dinner, girl, not on the street." She lowered her gaze for a moment, but didn't back down. "I'm sorry, sir. I just wanted to help my mom." The others at the table laughed, except Klaus, who watched her with curiosity. "Come on, Richard," said the German. "Leave her alone. Maybe she's a good saleswoman." Richard, wanting to demonstrate control, leaned back in his chair and said with a challenging tone, "All right, but let's make this interesting. If you sell me those chocolates in German, I'll pay you $100,000. The table erupted in laughter. Everyone expected to see the girl get confused, stammer, or simply give up. But she looked him in the eyes without fear and nodded. "Do you really mean it, sir?" "Of course," he replied confidently. "If you speak German, I'll give you $100,000. But if you don't, you'll learn a lesson." Silence took over the place. Klaus adjusted his jacket and watched with interest. The girl took a deep breath, lifted her head, and began to speak in fluent, perfect German with impeccable pronunciation. The words came out confidently, with such natural intonation that Klaus himself was surprised. The men at the table looked at each other without understanding a single word, while Richard tried to hide his discomfort. When she finished, the girl extended a chocolate to the businessman. "That's what you asked for, sir. Now you're going to keep your word." Richard didn't know what to say. He was paralyzed, searching his mind for an excuse. Klaus leaned forward, still impressed. "Her pronunciation is excellent," he said. "She spoke German more correctly than many of my employees." Richard forced a nervous laugh. Well, it was a joke, girl. Don't take it so literally." The girl lowered her gaze, but this time not out of shame, but disappointment. "My mom always says that words are worth more than money, sir." The atmosphere changed immediately. What had been a dinner of laughter became tense. The men looked away, uncomfortable with Richard's attitude. Klaus stared at him without a trace of sympathy. "A joke," he said in a dry tone. "In my country, a man of his word doesn't go back on it, especially not in front of a child." Richard tried to change the subject, but Klaus didn't allow it. Klaus continued, looking at everyone present. "You said you were an honorable man, Richard. I need trustworthy partners. If you don't keep your promises out of pride, how can I trust you for $1-million deals?" The American felt his pride crumbling. The girl was still there with her basket in her hands, looking at him with a mixture of innocence and justice. And for the first time in a long time, Richard didn't know how to get out of the situation. The tension was so strong that no one dared break the silence. Klaus slowly placed his glass on the table and said firmly, "I want to see if your word is worth what you say." And right at that moment, Richard understood that he had dug his own grave. With a simple joke, Richard felt the air become heavier. The German's gaze pierced him with a mixture of disappointment and judgment. The girl still stood there, holding her basket with small hands that began to tremble. No one said a word. Only the soft ticking of the clock on the wall could be heard, marking the exact second when a powerful man's pride turned into his ruin. "Richard," Klaus finally said with a calmness that hurt, "in Germany, a given word is a contract. You yourself said you would pay $100,000 if the girl spoke German. She did, and she did it better than you." Richard tried to smile, but his face was rigid. "You can't be serious, Klaus. It was just a joke." "A joke," the German interrupted. His voice sounded firm without rising. What you just did is not a joke, it's disrespecting honesty. If you treat a poor girl like this, how will you treat your partners when it's convenient? The men at the table lowered their eyes, some embarrassed, others nervous. No one dared defend him. Richard looked around seeking support, but everyone avoided him. For the first time, he realized he was alone. The girl took a step back as if wanting to leave. "Don't worry, sir, I don't need your money," she said softly. "I just wanted to sell some chocolates, not humiliate anyone." That phrase fell like a dagger in Richard's heart. Pride burned inside him, but the innocent look of that girl who didn't hate him, only pitied him, weighed more heavily. Klaus took a deep breath and stood up. "I can't do business with someone who doesn't keep their word. My values have no price." Richard stood up too, desperate. "Klaus, wait! Don't ruin this over something trivial." The German interrupted him coldly. "It's not trivial, it's your word." An uncomfortable silence filled the place. Richard looked at the girl, then at the German, and finally at his own reflection in the wineglass. His breathing became heavy. He knew that if he didn't comply, he would lose a deal that had taken him months to secure. But if he did, his ego would be crushed in front of everyone. Suddenly, something in him broke. Maybe it was the exhaustion of living a facade, or maybe the clear gaze of that girl who reminded him of his daughter, whom he barely saw. He lowered his head and took out his checkbook.
"Tell me your name, little one," he murmured.
"Mary, sir." Richard wrote the check with trembling hands, signed it, folded it, and handed it to her. "Here you go, and I'm sorry. I shouldn't have made fun of you." The murmur in the room grew louder. No one expected him to do it. Some applauded softly, others just watched in silence. Klaus, without saying a word, smiled slightly and nodded with respect. "Now I can shake your hand," he said, "because a man who recognizes his mistake is worth more than one who pretends not to make them." Richard looked at him with gratitude, but also with shame. "Thank you for reminding me what I forgot." The girl hugged her basket and smiled. "My mom always says that when someone keeps their word, heaven rejoices." That phrase moved everyone. Klaus ordered a couple of boxes of chocolates to go and gave Mary a card. "When you grow up, if you want to study languages in Europe, show them this. I'll help you." Mary looked at him surprised, almost unable to believe it. "Really? Of course, a mind like yours shouldn't be selling candy all your life," he replied as the room erupted in discreet applause. Richard sat down again with glassy eyes. Inside, something had changed. He no longer thought about the $100,000 he had lost, but about the years he had wasted trying to seem more than he was. That night, after everyone left, he remained alone, facing his empty glass. The echo of the girl's words still resonated in his mind. The next day, he called his assistant and asked for information about language schools for children without resources. He created a scholarship called The Value of One's Word, and each year that scholarship would remind him that sometimes the biggest lessons come disguised as shame. Weeks later, he received a letter written with childish neatness. "Thank you, Mr. Richard, for keeping your promise. With your help, I'm studying more languages. Maybe one day I can teach you German for real. Mary." He smiled sincerely for the first time in a long time. He knew that the money that had initially hurt to give had been the best investment of his life. The narrator closed with a serene voice. "You never know who's behind the mask. Appearances can deceive, but respect and dignity must always be non-negotiable." And as the camera pulled away from the scene of the empty restaurant, a phrase floated in the air like an undeniable truth. "Words, when kept, are worth more than any fortune."